In Britain, it gets dark early during the autumn and winter months. Throughout December, the sun sets by around about 4 p.m. for most of the country. And from the beginning of November to the end of January, if you work a 9 to 5, you're going home in the dark. And with darkness brings bright lights, which dazzle many motorists. So if you struggle to drive at night because of bright lights, this video may help. Where you look makes a huge difference to how much you are dazzled. More on that one later. But firstly, I want to talk about how you can prepare the car to reduce glare and make it easier. Firstly, make sure your windscreen is crystal clear. I use this product, Auto Glim Fast Class. I'm not sponsored by Auto Glim. This is just a product I've been using for years, and I keep a bottle in my car all the time. It says you can use it on the plastics as well as the glass, and I pretty much use it everywhere, including the leather on the steering wheel. Doesn't say you can do that, but I don't have a problem with it. It's just a quick and easy way to keep the interior fresh and keep the windows clean. However, in the winter, I feel I have to go a step further because the sun is low, and headlights mean any streaks in the glass distort my view. So I use this Auto Glim glass polish. I don't actually know if this is a good product because I've not compared it to other products to know if it's good compared to the competition or not, but it does work well. I put it on the window, leave it a few minutes and then buff it off, and then oh yes, I can see. Even with the sun, even with headlights, you don't get so much glare. It's easy to see around the headlights and see the road where you want to place the car. And there are other tools, this is one of my favourites, that make this job a little bit easier. I'll leave links in the description to the products I've mentioned. I don't put chemicals on this, I just use it to buff off any of the chemicals that I've used to make sure the window is crystal clear. And then I can peel that off and put it in the wash. Once you have a clear windscreen, try and keep it that way. So avoid touching it and leaving fingerprints, but also avoid using a cloth to wipe off fog and condensation, because all you're doing is taking water from the window, putting it on the cloth. You put your cloth somewhere, the water evaporates and goes back on the window, and you're back to square one. And every time you're wiping it, you're smearing the window, meaning it's harder to see when bright lights are on the window because you get that glare and you see all those smear marks. Use your air conditioning to keep your windows free of moisture. You may be surprised to hear that modern day air conditioning systems, climate control systems, and when I say modern day, my 2003 Seat Ibiza, which was my first learner car, had this system. You leave the air conditioning on permanently. The AC light is on, but the air conditioning compressor isn't necessarily doing anything. It just works when it needs to. It switches itself on and off. So having the air conditioning on is giving the car permission to use the air conditioning, but it will only use it if it needs to. And in the winter, it can come on to dehumidify the cabin to keep the windows clear of moisture. It keeps the evaporator dry so you don't get mold, and when you turn the air conditioning on, you get that horrible smell if you haven't used it for a while. That doesn't happen. And it cycles the compressor so that it doesn't fail from leaving it off throughout the winter, and then it seizes up and doesn't work when it comes to the summer, leading you to a very expensive repair bill when you've been trying to save a tiny bit in fuel. The air conditioning compressor does not use much fuel when it's only trying to dehumidify the car. If you have an old dumb system or even a new dumb system where you don't have climate control, you just have higher fan, lower fan and hot and cold, then yes, you want to cycle it yourself, because when you press the air conditioning button, the AC compressor's on full pelt, and you don't want it on full pelt all the time because it does use more fuel. So turn it on and off as you wish, but I wouldn't leave it off throughout the winter, and I wouldn't use cloths to wipe your moisture off because, well, you may lead yourself to an expensive repair bill with your AC compressor, but also it's not as nice driving around windows that keep fogging up all the time. It's not as safe either. And make sure you have good wiper blades. Your wiper blades should be wiping with a clear streak. It shouldn't be smearing. If they're smearing, replace them. I use Bosch blades. I'm not sponsored by them. I've tried many different blades and I find Bosch give me the clearest wipe and they last a long time. They're only a little bit more expensive than most other brands, but the fact they last longer than the other brands I've tried means they've actually been cheaper. And when it comes to your glasses, if you wear glasses, the anti-glare coating, the blue type of anti-glare coating is for computer screens and can actually be worse for driving than having no anti-glare coating. The green type of anti-glare coating is for driving. That should make it easier when you're on the road at night. Ask your optician for more details. Make sure you're using your anti-dazzle rear view mirror. Some are automatic and automatically get darker when there's light shining into the mirror. This one's manual and I have to make it darker myself by putting this tab. I can still see behind, but everything's dark. I'll show you an illustration of that now from a video I made earlier where you can see the difference. I'll leave a link to that video. That video is more about night driving in general. Some cars even get anti-dazzle side mirrors, which makes such a difference when driving at night. It's a shame that that technology hasn't filtered down to the cheaper cars. It's been around for decades, but it still seems to be reserved for the more premium, expensive models. If you struggle driving at night, I highly recommend looking at a car with that technology if it's something you can afford. I recommend keeping your headlights clean, not only so that you get better visibility, but also to help oncoming traffic. Because when your headlights are dirty, that can distort your beam, causing more glare for oncoming traffic. The trouble with modern headlights is that they're a slightly whitish bluish colour, whereas before we had halogen headlights which were slightly yellow. And if you get two lights of the same brightness, one slightly blue, one slightly yellow, and you shine them both at a human, the human is more likely to find the bluish coloured light uncomfortable because blue light is harder on the eyes. So why have cars got whitish bluish lights over the last 20 years? I'm not sure. I have a suspicion though. I think it's because xenon lights, which were fancy and modern, were slightly blue. And then when we went over to LEDs, well, car manufacturers wanted their cars to look modern. So they kept them that colour, even though LEDs can be whatever colour you like. It's a hunch, I don't know if that's the actual truth, but it doesn't make you see further. You could have a light that's slightly yellow and still see just as far, but the oncoming traffic won't be as uncomfortable because of your light. They'll be more comfortable because it's yellow, that's what I'm saying, instead of blue. And lighting technology is brilliant now. It's such a shame that we have this colour because we get adaptive full beams on some cars which dim the oncoming car whilst allowing you to see far with full beams. And the system does work. I use 2 cars with this system and I don't get complaints from oncoming traffic that I'm blinding them. So it's a shame we have that colour. Some people use yellow glasses to try and filter out the blue light and increase contrast, and that does work and that can make driving more comfortable, but I can't recommend it because it does filter out light. Therefore, in some situations, you're going to see less. And in the highway code, it does state, Rule 94, do not use tinted glasses at night or in poor visibility. What you may be surprised to hear, I know I certainly was that the RAC found that younger drivers reported more of a problem than older ones when it comes to driving at night with bright lights. 30% of drivers aged 17 to 34 thought headlights were too bright, compared with around 19% of those aged 65 and over. I'm surprised by that. I would have thought bright lights would be affecting older people more than younger people with young eyesight. But according to what the RAC found, that's not actually the case. As I said earlier, where you look makes a big difference to how you are affected by glare. My advice is to not look directly at the lights. Look at the road next to the lights where you need to drive. If you look directly into the lights, that's going to affect your vision and it's going to give you these spots in your vision where the light remains even though you're no longer looking at it. So focus on the road, be aware of the lights in your peripheral vision, be aware of where vehicles and hazards are, but try to focus on where you're going. Many people are going to disagree with where I'm telling you to look in this video. They're going to say you should look as far as you can when you're driving. Now that's true when you're on a race circuit, because on a race circuit you're trying to find the straightest line through the corner, and looking as far as you can through the corner can help you find that straight line. But on the road, you're trying to stay within your space. And when you want to stay within your space, you need to look in your space. Looking far actually makes you cut the corner. However, don't just look where I'm telling you to look in this video. I'm telling you where you need to look to reduce the chances of you being dazzled, or to minimize how much you're dazzled. You should still look far every so often to get an early warning of signs and hazards up ahead. Your eyes can only focus on a very small area at a time. Most of what you see is peripheral vision. And when you want to look more closely at things, that's when you focus on that individual spot. For example, if you're reading a word or want to see something in more detail, but that spot you're focusing on is incredibly small. At traffic lights, I don't look directly at the lights. I'm looking about here right now, and in my peripheral vision, I can see that they're red, and I will see when they change. However, when they do change to green, I will have a brief glance towards them to make sure the green light is for me and no one else. When the road up ahead is bending to the left, it can be difficult not to look into the lights because the cars are directly in front of you. But what I do is I look short of the lights on the road surface where I want to go. I'm not looking directly at the orange flashing light because that is going to be distracting. I'm looking down at the road. I know there's a vehicle there. I know it has orange flashing lights. If I was to look directly at that right now, that would be uncomfortable. I'm looking at this space and trying to judge if it's wide enough for a car. It's tight, but as the traffic is stationary, I'm going to squeeze through slowly. Now I'm going to look at where I want to stop at the line, the stop line on the road. I know the lights are red. I can see that in my peripheral vision. But when they go green, I will check to make sure it's a green light for me and not someone else, as I explained earlier. When I'm waiting in traffic, I'm not looking at the brake lights. I'm looking at the road before the car that I am following. Or I'm looking at the bottom of the bumper, or I'm looking either side of the car, but I don't look directly into the brake lights. To do so would be uncomfortable. I recently made a video where I said I don't find brake lights bother me even at night. And in fact, people I've taught don't seem to be bothered by them either. And I got some comments saying that I have young eyesight and that when I get older it's going to affect me. But actually my eyes are quite sensitive to light, so I thought, what am I doing differently? And when I was driving, I was paying more attention to where I was looking, and I realised I'm never looking at the brake lights. That's why they're not hurting me. When I look at them, it does cause me some discomfort, but I'm always looking anywhere but the bright light. During the day, I look directly at the brake lights because they're harder to see. But at night time, there's no need. It's obvious when they're on because they do stand out. There's no point moaning about everyone using their brakes in traffic because that's not going to change anything. If you look ahead, people generally stay with their foot on the foot brake with their brake lights on. So the best thing to do is to try and find a way around it so that it doesn't make you feel uncomfortable, because complaining about it isn't going to change anything. You're not going to stop everyone or change the way everyone drives. Or should I say many people drive, not everyone, because some people do use the handbrake when they're waiting in traffic. It's just the minority. In traffic like I am now, I stay far enough back that if the car in front stops suddenly, I can stop less suddenly. And I'm not looking at the lights of the oncoming cars, and I'm not looking into the lights of the car that I'm following. I'm looking here. That's the easiest place for me to look, and it's putting the least strain on my eyes, and I'm very aware of the oncoming cars on the right. I'm very aware of the cars approaching from the left at the junction, and I'm also aware of the car in front that it's braking. Although I'm not looking at their brake lights, I know it's happening, the warning is there. But all that time, I've been looking here and occasionally up at the signs. However, when you're driving in an area that you know very well, you're less likely going to be looking at signs because you know where the speed limits are, you know where the hazards and the junctions are. Signs are more useful when you don't know the area because it tells you what's about to happen and what you need to do. At roundabouts, it's more challenging because I need to look at the lights of the car to know which way they're going. But I can also use their position, and when I look at the lights, I keep it brief to avoid discomfort. Cat's eyes are wonderful things. You can see where your lane is clearly at night. They're not dazzling. They're just the right brightness. Red on the left Amber signifies the central reservation. Green is areas where you can cross, and white divides the lanes. So there's lorries coming in quite early into my lane there. Ideally they should wait until the solid line has finished. The car behind me has very bright lights, so I'm going to put the mirror into night mode. I can still see the cars behind me, but it's comfortable. The lights are much more dim. At the moment there's road work, so I've only got one lane, but usually there's 3 lanes down here. And if I was looking to change lane, I'll be primarily looking in this mirror because the lights are dim, it's not uncomfortable. And when I've decided to change lane, that's when I would also use the wing mirror, but I'd only use the wing mirror briefly to avoid discomfort. I'm on a country road at the moment and I'm looking here. I'm not looking at the lights of the oncoming car. Full beams on, car coming, full beams off. Looking here again, next to the space where the oncoming car is. I slow down because it's narrow, and then I'm carrying on. I'm not putting my full beams on because I'm on this bend at the moment, so there's not much point. It's not going to help me see round the bend, and now I can turn them on. I'm taking this left here, basically a straight, but it is a left. But I'm not going to look at the lights, I just look at the road. Well, that's a big puddle, very wet there, went around that. Look at the road, look at the space I can use, because at the end of the day, looking at the oncoming car doesn't show you how much room you have to use. It shows you where the oncoming car is, but it doesn't show you how much space is left next to it for you to use. Always focus on the space, don't focus on the hazards. That's what I'm always trying to get my pupils to do. The hazard perception tests get them focusing on hazards, which is actually the opposite of what I'm trying to get them to do when they're driving. I'm getting them to look where they can go and where they can wait whilst being aware of the hazards using their peripheral vision. So full beams off because of the oncoming car, looking here at the space next to it, very narrow, so very slow, but focusing on that gap I've got, and now moving away from the mud and carrying on. Full beams on just for a bit so I can see up to that bend. And it's a sharp bend, so I turn my full beams off now, so that as I go around this bend, I'm not going to blind anyone, but also it helps me see the lights of the oncoming car earlier, so I know what's coming. Looking at the space, into the space, which is slightly off-road here. This is a waiting area, which isn't very well made. As you can see, the car's bouncing around. And now I'm waiting, go further forward so cars can fit behind me. I'm not going to look at the lights. Quick check of the mirrors just to make sure nobody is trying to pass me. And now focusing on the road up to where the car is up ahead of me, but I'm not looking at their tail lights, I'm looking at the road just behind them. I know the camera can see less though, but I can see quite clearly, or I can see quite clearly up to that car in front of me. So that's my advice to avoid being dazzled by headlights at night. Firstly, make sure your windscreen is crystal clear so that you don't have all of the refraction from the smudges in the window distorting your view. Also, don't look directly at the lights. The only reason why you can see me right now, it is very dark outside, is because there is an incredibly bright light there that I'm not going to look directly at. The moment I look directly at that, it's going to hurt my eyes. I'm going to have that the light imprinted in my vision for a minute or two afterwards. In fact, I can show you that light. I just looked at the light trying to point the camera at it. That was a bad idea. Yeah, I can still see that light now. But if I don't look at that light, I'm fine. If you found the video helpful, please give it a thumbs up. And if you're looking for car insurance, check out the links to Collingwood and Confused in the description. If you're learning to drive and want to insure yourself on somebody else's car, then Collingwood are there for you, because you can do so without affecting the owner's policy, and that takes away a big stress from the owner of that car that you're using to practice your driving in. Via the link at the moment, there's up to 35% off and a £20 Amazon gift card. If you want to insure your own car, I recommend checking out the link to confused.com, because you fill out one quote form and get loads of quotes back from many insurers to compare who's cheapest. And you can change your car on that quote as many times as you like without having to do the whole quote again, which means you can compare how much it costs to insure different cars quickly and easily. You notice I'm either looking this way or at you. I'm not looking anywhere there, because that will be very uncomfortable if I do that. Using the links doesn't cost you anything, but it does support the channel. So thank you very much. Subscribe to get my future videos, and until the next one, cheerio.